She told her best friend she'd finally be free if I disappeared before her birthday. She didn't know I was standing behind the door. Have you ever loved someone so deeply that hearing them wish you were gone felt like dying while still breathing? I'm not talking about an argument, not about heat-of-the-moment words thrown like weapons in a fight. I'm talking about the calm, deliberate kind of cruelty. The kind spoken in relaxed tones over wine, the kind accompanied by laughter. Those words didn't echo in my head. They didn't bounce around like some angry mantra I could eventually shake off. No, they sank. They sank into every part of me that had ever believed in us, in her, in the life we built together. They sank so deep that when I finally exhaled, I wasn't the same man anymore. If your wife said that, if the person you sacrificed for, the person you restructured your entire existence around, the person you chose every single day, if that person casually told someone else that your absence would be a relief, a freedom, a gift, what would you do? Would you confront her? Would you scream and demand explanations and beg for her to take it back? Or would you do what I did? Would you quietly, methodically make it happen? Drop your thoughts below if you want, but listen first, because what happened next will make you rethink everything you thought you knew about love, about pride, and about revenge. I came home 3 days early from a business trip. It wasn't planned. The conference ended ahead of schedule, and I thought, foolishly as it turns out, that surprising her would be romantic. That she'd be happy to see me. That maybe, just maybe, it would bridge whatever distance had been growing between us for months. The house looked perfect when I pulled into the driveway. The lights were on in the living room, warm and golden through the curtains. Our garden, her garden really, she'd spent hours on it, was blooming with late summer flowers. Everything looked peaceful, serene, like a postcard of married life, the kind of scene that makes you think you're doing something right. I'm not an impulsive man. I never have been. I'm the type who thinks before speaking, who plans rather than reacts, who believes that most problems can be solved with patience and effort. Discipline. That's what my father taught me. Control your emotions, control your life. I'd built everything on that principle. My career, my relationships, my entire identity. I was the steady one, the reliable one, the one who fixed things instead of breaking them. The front door was unlocked. I could hear her voice before I even stepped inside, drifting from the living room along with someone else's, her best friend, I realized. They'd been friends since college, and honestly, I'd never liked her much. Too loud, too opinionated, the type who seemed to view marriage as some kind of prison sentence that women needed to be rescued from. But I'd never said anything. That's not what you do when you're trying to be a good husband. You accept your wife's friends, you smile and make small talk and pretend you don't notice the little barbs. I set my suitcase down quietly in the hallway. I was going to walk in, surprise them both, maybe suggest ordering dinner, something normal, something married people do. But then I heard my name. I just don't know how much longer I can keep pretending, she said. Her voice was clear, not emotional, not conflicted, just tired. Like she was discussing a job she wanted to quit. Every time he walks through that door, I feel this weight, this obligation, like I have to perform happiness. The friend murmured something I couldn't quite catch. I heard the sound of wine being poured, the gentle clink of glass on glass. I know, my wife continued. There was a pause, and then, and I will remember this sound for the rest of my life, she laughed. Not a bitter laugh, not a sad laugh. A genuine, light, almost relieved laugh. God, I'd be so much happier if he just disappeared, especially before my birthday. Can you imagine? Just me, no obligations, no pretending everything is fine, just freedom. I stood there in my own hallway, holding my briefcase, and felt my entire world reorganize itself around those words. Have you ever had a moment where everything you thought was real suddenly reveals itself to be a performance? Where you realize you've been the only one actually living in your marriage, while your partner has been merely occupying the space beside you? I didn't break anything. I didn't shout or storm in or demand explanations. I didn't even move. But something inside me, something fundamental, quietly ended. Not with drama, not with tears or rage, It just stopped, like a heart that realizes it's been beating for someone who stopped listening to it a long time ago. The conversation continued. They talked about her birthday party, the one she'd been planning for weeks, the one she'd been so excited about. They talked about her plans for the future, plans that apparently didn't include me. They laughed about inside jokes I wasn't part of. They discussed her life as if I was already gone. I stood there for maybe 5 minutes, maybe 10. Time does strange things when your entire reality is collapsing. And then, very calmly, very deliberately, I took a breath, put on the face I'd apparently been married to. The performance face, the pretend everything is fine face. And I walked into the living room. "Hey, honey," I said, my voice perfectly normal, perfectly level. "I'm home early." The look on her face, Jesus Christ. The shock, quickly covered by a smile so fake it might as well have been made of plastic. "Oh my God, I thought you weren't coming back until Friday." I hugged her. She hugged me back. We performed our marriage right there in front of her friend, who was watching with knowing eyes, probably wondering if I'd heard anything. I kissed my wife's cheek. It felt like kissing a stranger. "Conference ended early," I said, setting my briefcase down. "Thought I'd surprise you." "Well, you certainly did that," she laughed, and it was the same laugh I'd heard moments before. The one that celebrated my absence. Her friend made excuses about leaving. I was polite. I was charming. I was exactly who I'd always been, because that's what discipline teaches you, how to maintain control, even when everything inside you is screaming, even when your heart is turning to ash. After her friend left, we had dinner. She asked about my trip. I asked about her week. We discussed her birthday party, which was 8 days away. She was so excited, going on about the venue she'd booked, the decorations she'd ordered, the guest list. I listened and nodded and asked questions. I was the supportive husband, the interested partner, the man who was supposed to disappear, and the whole time I was studying her, really studying her, looking at the woman I thought I knew and seeing all the places where I'd been fooling myself, the way her smiles never quite reached her eyes when she looked at me, the way she touched my arm with the same casual detachment you'd use with an acquaintance. The way she talked about our future in abstract terms that somehow never included specific plans that involved both of us. How long had she been like this? How long had I been too devoted, too committed, too blinded by my own love to see that she'd checked out? That night, after she fell asleep, easily, peacefully, without a care, I sat in my study and I wrote in my notebook, 7 days. 7 days until her birthday. 7 days until she expected celebration and joy and attention. 7 days to execute what she'd wished for. Because here's what people don't understand about betrayal. It doesn't make you weak. It doesn't always break you down into tears and begging and desperate attempts to fix what's broken. Sometimes, if you're wired a certain way, if you've built your entire life on discipline and control, it crystallizes you. It turns your pain into something cold and clear and purposeful. She wanted me gone? Fine. I would vanish, but on my terms, with my timing, with consequences she never saw coming. I'm not a cruel man. I want you to understand that. I've never been vindictive. I've never believed in revenge for revenge's sake. But there's something about being wished away by the person you love that changes your chemistry. It's not about hurting them back. It's about respecting their wishes in a way they never expected anyone to actually do. Over the next 7 days, I became someone I didn't recognize. Or maybe I became who I actually was once all the performance and pretending was stripped away. I started with the practical things, the boring, necessary things that no one thinks about when they fantasize about their partner disappearing. I called my lawyer, someone I'd known for years, someone discreet. I explained the situation in calm, measured terms, no emotion, just facts. We started the paperwork, divorce papers, asset division, everything documented, everything legal, everything ironclad. Then I moved to the financial elements. We had joint accounts, of course we did, we were married, but I'd always been the primary earner. I'd always been the one managing our finances while she spent freely on things she wanted. Her career was more of a hobby than a necessity, something she did for fulfillment rather than survival. I transferred funds. I closed accounts. I separated everything that was mine from everything that was ours. It took 3 days of careful work, late nights in my study while she slept peacefully upstairs, but I did it all quietly, efficiently, without leaving any loose ends. I contacted the venue for her birthday party. Polite, professional. I'm terribly sorry, but we need to cancel. Yes, I understand there's a cancellation fee. That's fine. Yes, I'll handle all the financial details. The florist, the caterer, the DJ she'd hired, the photographer. Every single vendor got a call from me, apologizing for the inconvenience, accepting whatever fees were necessary, making sure every single deposit and every single refund went to accounts she couldn't access. She planned candles and confetti and music and celebration. I planned consequences. At night, while she scrolled through her phone or watched television, I packed. Not everything, not obviously, just the things that mattered. Documents, photographs of my family, my blood family, not the one I'd tried to build with her. Clothes, personal items. I did it slowly, carefully, taking things from the back of closets and the bottom of drawers, things she wouldn't notice missing until it was too late. I called my best friend, someone who'd been with me since college, someone who'd seen me through everything, someone who knew without asking that this was serious. I need a favor, I said. On Friday morning, I need you to come to the house. 6 a.m., I need you to change the locks. Everything that belongs to her needs to be outside. Can you do that? Jesus Christ, he said. What happened? She got her wish, I told him. That's all you need to know. He agreed. He didn't ask more questions. That's what real friendship looks like, knowing when to help without requiring explanations. During those 7 days, I went through the motions of being her husband. I kissed her goodbye in the mornings. I asked about her day. I helped her finalize details for the party I knew would never happen. I watched her excitement grow, watched her text her friends about the celebration, watched her plan an event that was supposed to mark another year of her life, but would instead mark the end of everything she took for granted. And every night, I felt myself becoming more detached, more separate. The pain was still there. Don't misunderstand me. The pain was enormous, but it was wrapped in something harder now, something that made it possible to function, to plan, to execute. Have you ever loved someone so much that you became a stranger to yourself in the process? That's what I'd done. I'd folded myself into shapes that fit her life, her needs, her desires. I'd made myself smaller and smaller until there was barely anything left of who I'd been before her. And she'd looked at that sacrifice, all that bending and accommodating and changing, and wished I would disappear. So I decided to honor that wish, completely, absolutely, in a way she'd never forget. The night before her birthday, we had dinner at home. She was giddy with anticipation. I can't believe tomorrow's finally here, she said, reaching across the table to touch my hand. The irony of that gesture, touching someone you've secretly wished away, wasn't lost on me. It's going to be special, I said, and I meant it, just not in the way she thought. You're not going to do anything embarrassing, are you? She asked, smiling. No big surprise or anything? You know I just want a fun party with friends. No surprises, I promise. Just exactly what you want. That night, I barely slept. Not because I was having second thoughts, not because I was reconsidering, but because I was running through every detail, making sure I hadn't missed anything, making sure the execution would be as clean and complete as the hurt she'd caused. At 4 in the morning, I got up. I showered. I dressed in the dark, careful not to wake her. I'd already moved my packed bags to the garage over the past few days, hiding them behind boxes she never touched. I loaded them into my car while the neighborhood slept, the pre-dawn darkness making everything feel surreal and distant. I stood in the kitchen for a moment, looking at the space we'd shared. The coffee maker we'd bought together, the photos on the refrigerator, the calendar on the wall with her birthday circled in red marker, exclamation points beside it. I didn't feel nostalgic. I didn't feel wistful. I felt nothing but a cold certainty that this was right, that this was fair. At 5:30, I sent the final text. To my lawyer, execute everything we discussed. To my friend, she'll wake up around 7. Everything needs to be ready by then. To the vendors, please proceed with the cancellations and refunds as discussed. And then I left. Just walked out of my own house, got in my car, and drove away as the sun started to rise. The morning was beautiful. Clear sky, birds singing. The kind of day that promises new beginnings. I drove for 3 hours to a cabin I'd rented in the mountains, somewhere with no cell service, somewhere quiet, somewhere I could exist in the silence I'd chosen instead of the silence of being erased from someone's life. I know exactly what happened that morning. She woke up around 7, probably noticed I was gone, probably assumed I'd gone to pick up coffee or run a last-minute errand for her party. She probably showered and did her hair and put on the outfit she'd been planning for weeks. She probably felt excited, alive, free even, thinking about the celebration ahead. And then she would have gotten the first call. The venue, we're so sorry but your event was canceled. Yes, by your husband, 3 days ago. Yes, the refund has been processed. Then the florist, the caterer, the DJ, one by one watching her perfect day disintegrate while she stood there in her party dress. Confusion turning to panic, turning to disbelief. And then, and this is the part I'd planned most carefully, the courier, arriving at 9 a.m. sharp, handing her an envelope, professional, courteous, completely oblivious to the bomb he was delivering. Inside that envelope, divorce papers, all properly filed, all legally binding, and a note, one single sentence written in my handwriting. You said my disappearance would make you happy. Happy birthday. I hope she had to read it twice. I hope the words took a moment to land. I hope she stood there in her house now, holding that paper and feeling the full weight of having her casual cruelty handed back to her wrapped in consequences. But I wasn't there to see it. That's the point. I was gone, vanished, exactly as she'd wished. My friend called me later that afternoon. I'd driven to a spot with cell service specifically to check in. It's done, he said. Jesus Christ, man, it's done. How did she react? She came home around noon, saw all her stuff on the porch, started banging on the door. I didn't answer. She called the police, but since your name is the only one on the deed and you'd filed for divorce, they said it was a civil matter. She sat in her car for hours, just sat there. And? Her friend came eventually, the one she was talking to that night. They had a huge fight on the lawn, lots of screaming, lots of crying. The friend left. Your wife, your ex-wife, I guess, tried calling you about 40 times. I'd turned my phone off. I didn't want to hear her voice, didn't want to hear the excuses or the justifications or the sudden proclamations of love that appear only when someone realizes they've lost something valuable. She tried her credit cards at a hotel. All declined. You closed everything? Everything, I confirmed. Where is she now? Still in her car, last I saw. Parked at the end of the street. It's getting dark. I thanked him, hung up, sat in the silence of the cabin and felt, what, satisfaction? No. Relief? Not quite. Completion, maybe. The sense that I'd honored the truth of our relationship instead of continuing to live in the fantasy of it. The thing about revenge, if you even want to call it that, is that it's empty. It doesn't fix the hurt. It doesn't erase the betrayal. It doesn't make you feel whole again. But it does give you something. Control, agency. The ability to say, you don't get to wish me away and keep everything I built. You don't get to discard me and face no consequences. She'd wanted freedom. I gave her exactly that. Freedom from me, from my support, from my money, from my presence, from everything I'd provided that she'd taken for granted while wishing I would disappear. Is that cruel? Maybe. But I'd argue it's fair. I'd argue that there's a special kind of justice in giving someone exactly what they asked for in exactly the way they never expected. I stayed in that cabin for 2 weeks. No contact, no phones, no internet. Just silence and books and the sound of wind through pine trees. I thought about a lot of things during those days. About the man I'd been when I married her, hopeful, idealistic, believing that love and effort were enough. About the man I'd become, smaller, quieter, always accommodating, always trying to be enough. And about the man I was now, someone who'd learned that sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself is honor someone else's honest wishes. When I finally returned to civilization, I had messages. Hundreds of them. From her friends, from her family, angry ones, pleading ones, confused ones, ones that tried to blame me for overreacting, for being vindictive, for destroying her special day. I read exactly none of them. I deleted them all. Because the conversation was over, she'd said what she meant that night, and I'd simply believed her. I heard through mutual acquaintances, former mutual acquaintances, that she'd eventually stayed with her best friend, the one who'd been there that night. Apparently that friendship didn't survive long either. Something about resentment and blame and the reality that her friend had encouraged her to treat me as disposable. Funny how quickly people turn on each other when consequences arrive. I heard she tried to contest the divorce, that she claimed I'd abandoned her, that I'd been cruel, that I'd overreacted to a private conversation. My lawyer shut that down immediately. Your client said she wanted him gone. He's gone. She got what she wanted. She doesn't get to change her mind about the terms. The divorce was finalized in 4 months. Quick, clean, exactly as I'd planned. She got some things, some furniture, some personal items, a small settlement that was legally required. I got everything else. The house, the accounts, my peace of mind. People ask me sometimes if I regret it, if I think I overreacted, if maybe I should have confronted her, given her a chance to explain, tried to work through it. And I always ask them, work through what? She didn't love me. She wished I would disappear. Those aren't things you work through. Those are fundamental truths that destroy the foundation of a relationship. You can't rebuild on that. You can't counsel your way past someone wishing you dead or gone or simply absent from their life. Do you know what the worst part was? Not the betrayal itself, not the words, not even the humiliation of realizing I'd been living a lie. The worst part was understanding that she'd probably felt this way for months, maybe years, and I'd been too devoted, too committed, too desperately trying to be good enough to notice. I'd twisted myself into shapes I didn't recognize trying to make her happy, and the whole time my presence itself was the problem. There's no fixing that. There's no amount of effort or change or sacrifice that can make someone love you when they fundamentally wish you weren't there. So I made her wish come true. And I made sure she understood exactly what losing me cost. Some lessons don't need shouting. Some justice doesn't need noise. Some disappearances are more permanent than death because they leave people alive to sit with their choices, to face the consequences, to understand that words have weight and wishes sometimes come true in terrible ways. She wished for silence, for my absence, for freedom from the weight of pretending to love me. And silence was the loudest thing she ever heard. My absence was the most present thing she ever felt. And her freedom came with a price tag she never expected to pay. I'm not the same man I was before that night in the hallway. I'm harder now, more guarded, less willing to fold myself into shapes that fit other people's needs. But I'm also more honest, more authentic, more committed to living in truth rather than in the fantasy of what I want relationships to be. I've started over. New city, new job, new life built on the ashes of the old one. And I'm okay, not happy maybe, not healed certainly, but okay, functioning, surviving, learning to trust myself again after trusting someone else nearly destroyed me. Sometimes I think about her, not with anger anymore, not with the burning need for revenge that drove those 7 days of planning, just with a kind of distant curiosity about whether she ever understood what she lost, whether she ever took responsibility for her words, whether she ever moved past blaming me for believing her. But mostly I don't think about her at all, because that's what disappearing really means, becoming irrelevant, becoming a closed chapter, becoming someone who existed in your life once but doesn't anymore, not even as a source of pain or anger or regret. I gave her what she wanted. I vanished. And in doing so, I gave myself something too, proof that I'm strong enough to honor my own worth. That I'm capable of walking away from someone who doesn't value me. That I can survive having my heart broken by someone I loved with everything I had. Do I think I was wrong? No. Do I think I was cruel? Maybe. But I think she was crueler first, in the casual, careless way that people are when they don't think they'll face consequences for their words. I just made sure the consequences arrived. Would you call this revenge? Justice? Cruelty? Fairness? I honestly don't know anymore. All I know is that when someone wishes you gone, the kindest thing you can do, for both of you, is grant that wish completely. She said she'd be happier if I vanished before her birthday, so I made her wish come true, and I've never looked back. I need to explain something about anger. About the specific kind of rage that comes from betrayal. It's not hot, it's not explosive, not for someone like me. It's cold, it's calculating. It burns at a temperature so low it freezes everything it touches until your entire emotional landscape is nothing but ice. When I stood in that hallway listening to her laugh about my absence, my theoretical absence, the one she was fantasizing about, I didn't feel hot rage. I felt something much worse. I felt clarity. The kind of brutal, unforgiving clarity that comes when all your delusions shatter at once and you're forced to see reality exactly as it is. For 3 years, I'd been playing a role, the loving husband, the supportive partner, the man who worked extra hours so she could pursue her hobbies, the man who came home tired but still asked about her day with genuine interest, the man who planned surprises and remembered important dates and tried, God I tried, to be enough, and she'd been counting down the days until I was gone. You want to know what pain really is? It's not the dramatic movie version where you scream and throw things and break down sobbing. That's grief, maybe. That's shock. But pain, real deep soul-destroying pain, is standing in your own hallway holding a briefcase while the woman you love discusses your death like it would be a relief. Like you're a problem to be solved. Like your absence would be the best birthday present she could receive. I kept thinking about that word. Disappeared. Not divorced. Not separated. Disappeared. Like I was something to be erased, wiped away, made to have never existed at all. How long had she felt this way? That's what kept circling in my mind during those 7 days. How many times had she smiled at me while wishing I was gone? How many times had she said I love you while thinking I wish you'd disappear? How many intimate moments had we shared where she was just going through the motions, performing affection like an actress in a play she wanted to quit? I thought about our wedding, how beautiful she looked, how I'd cried, actually cried, during my vows because I meant every single word, how she'd promised to love me in sickness and health, for better or worse, until death do us part. Had those words meant anything to her? Or had I been the only one standing at that altar believing in forever? I thought about the first year of our marriage. How happy I'd been. How I'd wake up next to her and feel grateful, blessed, like I'd won some cosmic lottery. I'd been raised to believe that marriage was work, that love was a choice you made every day, that commitment meant staying even when things got hard. So when she started becoming distant, when the warmth began to fade, I thought it was normal. I thought it was just life. I thought I needed to try harder. So I did try harder. I planned date nights. I bought flowers for no reason. I learned to cook her favorite meals. I listened to her talk about her day even when I was exhausted. I gave her space when she needed it. I was attentive when she wanted attention. I became a fucking contortionist of emotional labor, bending and stretching and twisting myself to fit whatever shape she needed that day. And it was never enough, because the problem wasn't what I was doing. The problem was that I existed. During those 7 days of planning, I had this recurring fantasy. I'd imagine confronting her, walking into the living room that night and saying, "I heard you. I heard every word." I'd imagine the look on her face, the panic, the scrambling to explain, the desperate backtracking. I didn't mean it like that. You're taking it out of context. I was just venting, but I never did confront her. Because what would be the point? What could she possibly say that would make those words unhearable? What explanation could justify wishing your husband would disappear? What context makes that okay? Besides, I'd learned something important over the years. People tell you who they are, not through grand declarations or dramatic moments, but through casual conversations when they think no one important is listening. She told me exactly who she was that night. She told me exactly what I meant to her, and I finally had the clarity to believe her. The practical planning was almost therapeutic in its way. Every account I closed felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. Every document I signed felt like shedding weight I hadn't realized I was carrying. Every item I packed felt like preparing for a rebirth instead of an ending. My lawyer asked me once during those days, "Are you sure about this? It's going to be brutal for her. Complete financial devastation on what's supposed to be a celebration day. That's intense." She told her friend she'd be happier if I disappeared. I said, "I'm just giving her what she wants." But the birthday thing, timing it like that, you know how that's going to look. I know exactly how it's going to look. It's going to look like consequences. He didn't argue after that. Maybe he understood. Maybe he'd been betrayed too and recognized the cold purpose in my voice. Maybe he was just professional enough to do his job without judging. Either way, he made sure every legal detail was airtight. That she couldn't claim abandonment. That she couldn't fight the asset division. That everything was documented and justified and completely legally bulletproof. I spent hours in my study those nights, going through old photos, looking at pictures from our wedding, our honeymoon, holidays, birthdays, random Sunday afternoons. I was trying to find the moment when she stopped loving me. Trying to identify the exact point when I transformed from partner to burden. But you can't see it in photos. We looked happy in all of them. She was smiling. I was smiling. We looked like a couple in love, which means either she was an incredible actress, or the shift happened so gradually that neither of us noticed. Or maybe, and this is the thought that kept me up at night, maybe she never loved me at all. Maybe I was always just convenient, just safe, just good enough until something better came along, or until she got brave enough to imagine life without me. I thought about all the times I'd asked her if something was wrong, all the times I'd noticed her distance and tried to address it. "Are you happy?" I'd ask. "Is everything okay with us?" And she'd always say yes, always reassure me, always tell me I was overthinking, always make me feel like I was the problem for noticing that something was off. Gaslighting. That's the modern term for it, isn't it? Making someone doubt their own perception of reality, making them feel crazy for noticing what's actually happening. I'd felt crazy for months. Felt like I was manufacturing problems that didn't exist. Felt like my insecurity was creating issues in an otherwise fine marriage. But I wasn't crazy. I was right. I'd been right the whole time, and she'd been lying. Not even lying, really, just performing, playing the role of happy wife while secretly wishing I would vanish. The night before her birthday, we had sex. She initiated it, actually. Came to bed in lingerie I didn't recognize, kissed me like she meant it, moved like she wanted me. And the whole time, I knew it was just another performance, another scene in the play we'd been acting out, another layer of the lie. Afterward, she fell asleep curled against me like we were still in love. Like I was still her person. Like she hadn't wished me dead or gone or simply absent from her life just days before. I lay there in the dark, feeling her breath against my chest, and felt absolutely nothing. No love, no hate, no anything. Just cold certainty that tomorrow, everything would change. I didn't sleep that night, just stared at the ceiling counting down the hours. At 3 a.m., I thought about waking her up, about telling her I knew, about giving her one last chance to, what? Apologize? Explain? Beg me to stay? What would that accomplish except giving her time to manipulate me into staying? Time to perform remorse she didn't feel? Time to trap me in this death of a marriage for even longer? No, better to be clean, be quick, be gone. At 4 a.m. I got up. She stirred but didn't wake. I looked at her one last time, trying to remember what it felt like to love her, trying to access those feelings I'd had on our wedding day. But it was like trying to remember someone else's life. That man who'd cried during his vows? I didn't know him anymore. He died in a hallway listening to his wife wish him away. Loading the car was surreal. Moving through our house, my house now, legally, in the dark, carrying bags to the garage, closing the door quietly so she wouldn't wake. I felt like a thief stealing my own life back. The drive out of the city as the sun rose felt like emerging from a tomb. Every mile between me and that house felt like breathing after being underwater. By the time I reached the highway, I actually laughed. Not from joy, from the sheer absurdity of it all. From the dark comedy of a woman wishing her husband would disappear and then waking up on her birthday to find he actually did. I thought about her waking up, looking at my side of the bed, noticing I was gone but not being worried because I'd been gone early before, making coffee, getting ready, excited for her party, imagining the day ahead, and then the phone calls would start. I pulled into a rest stop around 7 a.m. and allowed myself one moment of doubt. One moment where I thought maybe I was being too harsh, too cruel, too permanent. One moment where I considered turning around, going back, trying to save something that she'd already killed. But then I remembered her laugh. That light, relieved, genuine laugh when she talked about how happy she'd be if I disappeared. And the doubt evaporated like morning fog. I turned my phone off, got back in the car, drove deeper into the mountains toward the cabin I'd rented, toward silence, toward absence, toward the disappearance she'd wished for. The cabin was perfect, remote, quiet, no Wi-Fi, no cell service, just trees and sky and the sound of absolutely nothing. I unpacked slowly, methodically, put my clothes in the drawers, set up my laptop even though I couldn't connect to anything, made coffee in the small kitchen, sat on the porch and watched the sun climb higher, and I waited. Because I knew what was happening back in the city. I knew the exact sequence of devastation I'd orchestrated, and part of me, the part that was still angry, still hurt, still burning with that cold rage, needed to imagine it unfolding. 7 a.m. she wakes up, notices I'm gone but isn't concerned. 8 a.m. she starts getting ready, excited, happy, free from having to pretend around me. 9 a.m. the courier arrives. Hands her the envelope. She opens it confused, reads the divorce papers, sees the note. The world shifts under her feet. 9:30 a.m. the phone calls start. Venue canceled, flowers canceled, caterer canceled, DJ canceled, everything gone, everything refunded to accounts she can't access. 10 a.m. she tries calling me. My phone is off. She tries again and again. The calls go straight to voicemail. 11 a.m. she drives to the house, sees her belongings on the porch, tries her key. It doesn't work, bangs on the door. My friend doesn't answer because I told him not to. Noon she calls the police. They tell her it's a civil matter, that since my name is on the deed and I filed for divorce, she has no legal right to be there. 1 p.m. she tries her credit cards, all declined, tries to access our accounts, all closed. The financial reality sets in. 2 p.m. she calls her best friend, the one who'd been there that night, the one who'd encouraged her vision of freedom. They fight, because crisis reveals who people really are, and her friend probably wasn't prepared for the reality of supporting someone who'd lost everything. I imagine all of this sitting on that porch, drinking coffee, feeling nothing but cold satisfaction that I'd executed everything perfectly. But here's the thing about revenge. It doesn't actually make you feel better. It doesn't fill the hole left by betrayal. It doesn't erase the pain of realizing the person you loved viewed you as an obstacle to their happiness. It just gives you something to do with all that hurt. A direction to channel it, a purpose for all that rage. I spent 2 weeks in that cabin existing in a state of emotional suspension, not happy, not sad. Not anything, just numb. Like I'd burned through every emotion I had during those 7 days of planning, and now I was just empty. I read books, hiked, sat by the fire at night, thought about my life, about who I'd been before her, about who I'd become trying to be enough for her, about who I was now that I'd finally chosen myself over someone who'd never chosen me. When I finally turned my phone back on after those 2 weeks, It took 20 minutes just to load all the notifications. Messages, voicemails, emails, all from her. From her family, from mutual friends. A digital avalanche of confusion and anger and blame. I read exactly one message from her before deleting everything. It said, "How could you do this to me? On my birthday? You're a monster." I stared at that message for a long time, thinking about the irony, the complete lack of self-awareness, the inability to connect her wish for my disappearance with my actual disappearance. The victim mentality from someone who'd been secretly cruel for God knows how long. I typed out a response, "You got what you wanted," but I didn't send it, because even that felt like too much engagement, like breaking the silence I'd chosen, like giving her more of me when she'd already made it clear my presence was unwanted. So, I just deleted it, deleted everything, blocked her number, blocked her email, blocked her family, blocked anyone who thought they had the right to question my decision to honor her stated wishes. The divorce moved forward quickly. My lawyer was excellent. Every time she tried to claim I'd been cruel, he'd simply state, "Your client expressed a desire for him to disappear." He accommodated that request. She received exactly what she said would make her happy. There's something powerful about using someone's own words as a legal defense. She tried to get sympathy, tried to paint herself as the victim of a cruel husband who abandoned her. But too many people had heard her complain about me. Too many people knew she'd been unhappy. Too many people had seen her distance themselves from our marriage long before I finally left. The narrative she wanted to spin didn't hold up against the reality everyone had witnessed. The final divorce decree came through 4 months after her birthday. Fast for a divorce, efficient, clean. I signed the papers in my lawyer's office and felt nothing. No relief, no sadness, no sense of closure. Just administrative finality. Like closing a bank account, like ending a subscription, like finishing something that should have ended long ago. I moved to a new city after that. Took a job I'd been offered years ago but had turned down because she didn't want to relocate. Started fresh, in a place where no one knew me as her husband, where I could rebuild my identity as just myself. Therapy helped. Not because I regretted what I'd done, I didn't, but because I needed to process why I'd stayed so long in a marriage where I was slowly being erased. Why I'd ignored all the signs. Why I'd tried so hard to be enough for someone who decided I never would be. The therapist asked me once, "Do you think you could have handled this differently?" "Yes," I said. I could have confronted her, could have tried couples counseling, could have begged her to love me, could have made myself even smaller trying to be what she needed. And why didn't you? Because dignity matters, because I'd rather be alone than be with someone who wishes I wasn't there, because love that requires begging isn't love at all. She nodded. "And do you think what you did was fair?" "I think fairness is a myth. I think she wanted me gone and I left. I think she wanted freedom and I gave it to her. I think consequences are the only thing that teach people that words matter. So yes, I think it was fair. I think it was the fairest thing I could have done given the circumstances." Even the timing, even her birthday, especially the timing, especially her birthday, because she needed to understand that her wish came true, that the happiness she thought my absence would bring had a cost she never anticipated. People don't understand that sometimes the cruelest thing you can do is exactly what someone asks for. They think cruelty is doing the opposite of what someone wants. But real cruelty, poetic cruelty, is giving them exactly what they wished for and letting them discover it wasn't what they thought it would be. She wanted me gone. I'm gone. She wanted freedom. She's free. She wanted to not have to pretend anymore. Well, now she doesn't have to pretend. She got everything she wished for. And I got my life back, got my self-respect back, got proof that I'm strong enough to walk away from someone who doesn't value me. Got the cold comfort of knowing that I didn't stay and slowly disappear into nothing while she wished me away piece by piece. Do I still think about her? Sometimes, not with longing, not with regret, but with a kind of clinical curiosity, like thinking about a past version of yourself who made different choices. I wonder if she ever understood what she lost, if she ever took responsibility for her words, if she ever connected her private cruelty to her public consequences. But mostly I don't think about her at all, because that's what disappearing really means, not just physically leaving, but emotionally disconnecting. Becoming someone who existed in your past, but has no presence in your present or future. I'm building a new life now, slowly, carefully, with better boundaries and clearer understanding of my own worth. I date occasionally, though I'm careful. Guarded, maybe too much so. But I'm learning to trust again. Learning that one person's inability to love me doesn't mean I'm unlovable. Learning that her wish for my absence says everything about her and nothing about my value. Some nights I still feel that cold rage, that frozen fury that comes from betrayal. But it's less frequent now, less consuming, like a scar that's healed over but still aches in certain weather. And on those nights, I remind myself, I didn't break, I didn't beg, I didn't make myself smaller trying to fit into her vision of happiness without me. I honored her wish, and I honored myself in the process. She said she'd be happier if I vanished before her birthday, so I made her wish come true, and I've never looked back. That's not cruelty. That's just consequences finally catching up to careless words. That's just a man choosing dignity over desperation. That's just someone disappearing on his own terms instead of slowly fading away on someone else's. And if that makes me a monster in her story, so be it. Because in my story, I'm the man who finally chose himself, who finally recognized that love without respect is just slavery, who finally understood that staying with someone who wishes you were gone is the real cruelty to yourself. She got her wish, and I got mine. Proof that I'm stronger than the man who stood in that hallway and felt his world collapse. Proof that I can survive losing someone I loved. Proof that I can rebuild from ashes of betrayal. So no, I don't regret it. Not the planning, not the execution, not the timing, not any of it. I regret that it was necessary. I regret that she felt that way. I regret that 3 years of my life were spent loving someone who was counting down to my absence. But I don't regret finally giving her what she wanted. Because sometimes the most loving thing you can do for both people is grant a terrible wish and let the consequences teach the lessons that words never could.